Hi guys, it's Stribbers and welcome back to another episode of PGR2 Road to Platinum in the arcade mode. So, we've got a bit of a marathon of an episode today. We've got 4 more street races to do to finish off the street race section of the arcade mode. Street races 17 to 20 and it's in the section labelled World Tour Enduro. So that means these are going to be endurance races basically, and they are going to take a while. Pretty sure they've all got 5 laps each, and we start in Florence in the TVR Speed 6, and 8 cars in all of these events, and to be honest they are pretty difficult. So we'll have a look at how we do in this first one. Got a strange mix of cars. Don't think there's any theme towards which cars there are in these events. But getting clipped from behind there slightly, stopping us turning, which means we do go headfirst into the barrier. So that's already not a brilliant start, and it does get a little bit worse actually. So we've got the 355 F1 next to us there, who's going for a little spin out on us. Do manage to just about hold that though, so we move up into 4th place. Turning in way too early there, hitting the barrier. Trying to get used to this car as best I can. And we're just going wide at basically every corner, over accelerating, powering round the corners, and then crashing into the barrier and getting rear-ended as well. So that was basically the worst start I could have hoped for. Sitting in 4th place, and the leaders are quite far ahead at this point. 3rd place was 3 seconds ahead, and then obviously the 2 cars ahead of that were further ahead. So by the first lap, I tried to get used to this car as best I could. And I did get a little bit more used to it, so at this point I started driving a little bit better. Not perfectly, but certainly better than the first lap. As you see, we're dropping the car behind us now, which is about 3 seconds behind at this point. Braking nice and early there, nearly hitting the barrier and going on 2 wheels, so that wasn't the best. A little bit too close to the apex at that point. But we are catching up to this AC427 here, as it was a little bit further ahead before. Come around this section, which is a little bit difficult to do. Sometimes you've got to kick the end round, but now we can see all 3 of the cars that are ahead of us. So we are making some ground on them. And I do think this TVR is quicker than the rest. Possibly not the Dodge. The red one in front up there, but I think those 2 are battling as well, so they're slowing each other down, which is good for us. But I do think this car's the quickest one there, which does help you quite a bit. As you can see, I went into a slide there, and it's pretty hard to stop it when you go around the corner, so I just embraced it, let it happen. But just about going on the inside of the AC there, that could have gone a lot worse. We could have both spun out there, but in the end it was minimal contact. So in first place is the Porsche 911 Turbo, followed by the Dodge Viper GTS, which does go for a move on the inside very nicely of the Porsche, putting the Porsche up and going into first place. And again, that slows them both up, so that allows us to go for a little move here. Just trading paint with the Porsche here, then he does go back for a little lunge, forces us into the barrier. But we do have the acceleration looking like that on that straight. So we managed to get the better of him round there, which just leaves the Dodge Viper to try and catch up, as he takes that corner terribly there, allowing us to catch up quite a bit. Taking that corner nicely, so we're just trying to get in that draft zone at the moment. Seeing if we can reel this Dodge in. As I do know it is quite a quick car in that supercar series, but it doesn't handle the best. This TVR definitely handles better, even if it does slide a bit more. But we do manage to go around the outside of him on that corner, which is a bit of a different move. Don't normally go for that move, but we managed to make it work. So coming into lap 4 out of 5, we have the lead, which I wasn't expecting at the start of this race. Got a terrible start, and when the cars were sort of 4 or 5 seconds ahead, I didn't think we'd be making that time up. But luckily, they were having a little battle at the front before, which did give us that opportunity to catch them up. But the Dodge is still in contention here. Still only half a second behind, right behind us there. Only takes one slip up at this point. And again, maybe on that corner it's easier to kick the back end round with a little power slide, just to get the car turning round a bit more so you can accelerate earlier on. Taking these corners fairly nicely. That seems to be the time, or the place, where you make time up on the Viper there. As you can see, we're pulling away now to 1.2 seconds. So there's that section of the track that we seem to take better. And this section, I'm not too good at this one. It's quite hard to get this corner right, but I think that's a little bit better that time. Fighting that power sliding all the way around the corner. And coming into the last lap, and these are taking, if you look at the lap time there, about 1 minute 10, or just over that, 1 minute 12 each lap. So that's going to equate to about a 6-minute race. So it's definitely on the long side. And this is one of the, well, it's not the longest one out of the 4 we're going to do. Street race number 18, the next one, I believe, is the longest street race out of the lot. It's the track in Washington, the longest one there, which I'm not a fan of. But we'll get to that when we see the end of this race. So again, through these tight sections, that Dodge seems to be catching us up. But luckily we're getting to this point here where we do seem to pull away, doing them nicely through there, and not quite a bigger lead as last time. We'll have a look through here. 1.1 seconds, so it's around the same, to be fair. So just got to hold out around these last few corners. Try my best not to kick it into a slide, but you see on the exit there, when you do put the power down, it is starting to kick out. Around the final corner and across the line. We did have about a second lead on him there. So it's not the most difficult one, that one. If you get a better start, a lot better start than I did, then you should be fine, really. Shouldn't be too hard, that one. And I think the Dodge is going to be the only one that's going to test you, really. See, that 911 Turbo did finish 4 seconds behind there, so the Viper's going to be the hard one to beat in that one, and all the other cars in that aren't going to threaten at all. So we get a nice amount of kudos for that one, 8,100. Putting our total to 1.4 million, well, and then 40,000 after that, so nice little total there, not too far off 1.5 million there. So we move on to street race number 18 in the Corvette Stingray, and I had an absolute nightmare of a race in this thing. I really couldn't get used to driving this. I haven't driven it in quite a while, and I wasn't having any fun in it at all. It's an absolute power sliding machine and quite difficult to control, let's be honest. So we get past most of the cars on the first straight, and a couple cars took each other out. I think it involved the Mazda RX-7. Then we have the Subaru WRX, which we do pass on that first corner. And that leaves the Skyline, which does break in a random point in that corner when we were trying to overtake him on the inside. So we end up trading paint with him quite badly there and spinning him out, but that's very good for us. Even though it was a little bit of a malicious takedown, and then we're bouncing off the barriers at this point. Not doing very well with this car. Trying to learn how it handles again and how to put the power down, and it's very difficult. I seem to, no matter how much I was driving this in this race, I think this was my second attempt, this one. It's too hard to get used to. It just powers too much. Power slides way too much. And yeah, it takes a whole series to get used to it. I think by the end of the American Muscle series, when I was doing that, I did eventually get used to it. But yeah, not the easiest car to drive at all. But courtesy of the takedown, we do have a little bit of a lead here. Whether that's going to last, we'll have to find out. But this corner is so difficult to take in this car. You have to kick it into a slide and just feather the throttle perfectly to kick the end out and try and get it round. As you can see, the Skyline's right behind us again, looking for revenge. And we brake way too late there. Again, getting used to the brakes. Luckily, staying ahead of the Skyline at that point. But he is right behind us, and we do have the legs on the straight, even though he is in the draft zone. But the Skyline's definitely got the advantage around the corners. even though the Skyline does power slide a lot, it's still more stable than this Corvette. As you see, I got a little bit of a twitch going on there. It was going to spin out otherwise, so I had to correct. But luckily, Skyline didn't do so well through there either. So we've still got that little lead going on. And on my first attempt, I had a little fight with the Subaru, which slowed me up quite a lot. And by that point, the Nissan Skyline was already about 4 seconds ahead. And I gave it another lap to try and catch up, but I wasn't making any ground on him. So I employed the tactic of taking the Nissan Skyline out, getting in the lead and defending it. So just literally blocking him off at any point I could. Because even if I'm driving this, well, driving it better than I am now, I was still only making like a tenth every, like, I don't know, half a lap. So it was, we were just staying in exactly the same spot, and I wasn't catching it at all. So I'd say this is probably the hardest street race out of the lot. Out of the 20 in the arcade mode, this one's got to be the hardest. For me personally anyway, I'd say. It's just a very, very hard circumstance to try and catch up that Skyline if it does get ahead. But luckily we're in the position now where you can see we keep slowing the Skyline up at this point. So we've just got to see how we do. We can see it just coming up the inside of us there when we're power sliding round the corner. I'd certainly rather be in the Skyline at this point. But still just about holding on there until we break even later than we did on the first lap, which puts us back into second place. Looking up the inside here, it's not quite going to work, so we're dropping behind him, but luckily we've got the speed in the straight line and we've got that the draft there, and he did kick into a power slide there as we go around the inside, and basically an identical takedown move to the first one. Just hitting the side of him on the inside and sort of sending him into a spin a little bit. And luckily we were able to hold it again. So on lap 3, we're in the same position, ahead. Seeing if we can hold this. Having to tell myself to brake earlier in this car, because I just cannot get used to these brakes whatsoever. Drifting around there a little bit, and I've lost count of the amount of times I've hit the barrier in this one. I'm really not driving the best. So we'll have to see if we can keep this lead at this point. Getting a few good lines come up at least in the kudos at the top right there. Getting a nice slide through there. And we're going to have to see if this Skyline's going to start catching up again. And judge from here if the driving gets any better. And like I said, these races take so long. We'll have to see what lap time it is. It's going to be verging on 2 minutes, I'd say. Because we're already at 1 minute 15 seconds here. Kicking the end out round here again. Power sliding round there. Coming up to this awful corner again. Seeing if I can improve. Kicking it into a slide, going a little bit too wide that time, but that was a little bit better that time. Not the worst I've taken that for sure. And that was very close to the inside there, but getting it just about right, even though we did twitch on the way out, nearly power slide. But there we go, finally get this corner right. Braking early and not putting too much power on, so not going into a spin. And it does get a little bit laggy through that corner, so it's sometimes hard to judge what's going on. Doing this corner okay, coming round the finish line, and it is just over a 2 minute lap. So 5 laps, that equates to over a 10-minute race, which is a very long race. Very long indeed, probably the longest race I've done, excluding the Nürburgring. I think the longest race I've done on this one is about 2 laps, which is already like a 4-5 minute race, depending on what car you're in anyway, so it's not a short race at all. But at this point, we are keeping the lead on the Skyline. Keeping that couple second gap. As we know, he drives slowly through that corner there before, the one where we spun him out the first time. Getting a little bit too close to the inside of that barrier though. Hitting the barrier there, slowing us down. That's a difficult corner to take around there as well. Putting the power down here, let's see what we can do. Come around here fairly nicely. And it's still staying that distance behind, so we are driving better. We're not exactly dropping him though. See, he's actually caught up by half a second there. So here you can see what I mean, even though I'm driving better than I did. Still not driving amazingly, but if that skyline was ahead, I wouldn't be able to consistently drive well enough to catch it up. So that start is definitely the most important bit. I was going for this slide around the corner again, but as we can see, we crashed into the barrier, overcooked the slide a little bit, slowing us right down. And the skyline is starting to reel us in now. It's getting to that point. Getting a little bit of lag through here again. Getting hard to drive. Getting a drift on. And the skyline is in that zone again where he's going to look for the move. As we come across the final corner for the final lap. Crossing the line. So it's going to be a tense final lap. Have to see if we can hold the skyline off. Always hard to take that corner as well. The line seems to be very different for that second corner to what I'd take. But as usual, the skyline goes slow through that section, so that's allowed us a little bit of breathing room. Going a bit wide through there, but the skyline's still at that point. And this is the other section where they go slowly, so hopefully we'll do the same thing here. 1.3 seconds now, so it's a little bit more breathing room at this point. Taking a nice line through there and not putting too much power down. Getting a drift going around there, very nice indeed. Couldn't have really done that too much better there without hitting the barrier. So at this point, we're driving better, we're getting used to the car. But again, still not pulling away from that skyline. Still there. We have put a couple of tenths on him. It was 1.3, now 1.5, so putting a little bit of room between us, but then taking that corner not brilliantly. That is very hard to take. You have to go into the power slide there, otherwise the car just doesn't turn around. And finally, after trying this corner a million times, I finally do a nice little slide around there. Probably the quickest you can go around there. Just kicking it into a slide. Sticking as close to that apex as possible without hitting the apex. And we'll have to see how we do, because usually after this corner the skyline's right behind us. Taking a better line through there, sliding right out to the edge. And we do have a gap on the skyline there. So that is going to be a little bit better. And we finally do that race. That is one of the longest races I've done. And it certainly isn't easy. You definitely have to get ahead and just fight that skyline off as best we can. The RX-7 actually overtook the Impreza there. 10 seconds behind the Impreza was, and nearly 5 seconds the RX-7. So the skyline is going to be the one that's going to be a pain in the arse in that one. But we just about get it done. 10 minutes 40 that one took. Not the quickest race, but we do get 9,000 kudos exactly for that one. So that's a nice little boost to our kudos total there. Moving on to street race number 19, driving the TVR Tamora in Hong Kong. Again, 5 laps for this race, and this one is a little bit easier than the one we've just done, luckily. So we've got the Mercedes to our right there, also the BMW M3, which is a strange car to put in this. Ferrari F1 there as well, got the Lotus 340R, Porsche 911 Turbo, Corvette Z06, and that disappearing off in the distance is the Noble, which I was pretty shocked that was going to be in this race, considering we're in this TVR, in the TVR Tamora, and we can see we employ the takedown tactic for a second race in a row, but it doesn't work out for us as we lose control, and the Corvette goes in front, both following exactly the same line, hitting the wall, bouncing off both of us. But again, getting used to this car and how much better this drives than the Corvette Stingray. Trying to get my head around that. So we're chasing down this Z06 there, going a bit too wide at that point. Taking that much better through there. A little bit too tightly to that bit, hitting the barrier, but through here the AI always go ridiculously slow. And I know he'll be pulling over to the left there, so I go to the right hand side. And we've got the speed on him at that point. Try to go for a drift round there, but end up smashing into the barrier. So we've got the Noble M400 there ahead, and I was thinking we'd be completely outmatched because that absolutely flies, that car. And we're only in the TVR Tamora, it's not the quickest one, not the quickest TVR. We're going up that section there, going over the crest of the hill at the wrong point, and it does stop you turning. So I went straight into the barrier. And the Noble at this point is 2.5 seconds behind. In front, sorry. So we've got to try and track it down. But to my surprise, we were catching it through the corners. Because this TVR Tamora does handle pretty well, and it can put the power down pretty easily. And I don't think that Noble's the best at getting the power down at the low speeds. Much better when you're already going. I think it does tend to kick out a little bit. But getting too close to the barrier there, hitting it again. Lost count the amount of times I've hit it in this race so far. But as we can see, it's a much shorter race, this one, than the last one we've just done. Going through this section here, and we can see just how slowly the AI go through here. Going for up the left this side, which was probably a bad move, should have gone up the right hand side. And we do bounce off the barrier and deflect into the Noble, sending him flying into the other barrier. And that slows him down massively, and I'm pretty sure the Z06 just overtook it there. And you can see them both in the rear view there, having a little fight, so that's going to slow them up, so that's good for us. In the third lap now. So, from this point, we've got to hope they're not going to come back here. But looking at how quickly I caught the Noble up in this thing, you wouldn't think we'd have too many problems. They are 3.8 seconds behind. Learning the track now, learning the car with the track. There's two different factors. Obviously, you've got the different cars you keep using, but then also each car drives differently in each track because you've got to get used to where you have to brake and how you can take each corner. So it is a bit of an individual case scenario each time. Each new car on a different track is going to present you with a different challenge, so that's where the time runs and cone challenges are going to be very difficult. Time runs will be coming up next after we've done the street races. And again, learning the track in the car that you're given, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a few attempts, and it's going to be nothing close to easy. But we are on the 4th lap now. About 1 minute 20 a lap, so we're looking at about a 6-minute race. So I think that's around the same as the first race we did. So definitely on the shorter side. And we can see in the rear view, there's nobody anywhere near us at this point. Pulling away massively in this, so I'm not sure if this was balanced correctly, this one, in terms of the cards given. Nearly 5 seconds ahead, and compared to that last one in the Stingray, this is crazy easy. Making me think that, yeah, maybe it's not too balanced in this one, or maybe it wasn't balanced enough in the last one. Or maybe I was just driving the Stingray horrendously. Who knows? But again, you can see on the minimap how far behind some of the cars are. The last place, especially, is going to be absolutely miles behind. So I don't know why, in these sorts of races, they don't put seven cars on the track that are going to be a competition for you. They put some random back runners on that are really slow and never going to pose a threat. So it's a bit strange, really. You're thinking if this is the arcade mode and they want to make it as hard as possible, they'd put 7 cars on that are going to be a challenge to make it more interesting, and there'd be more competition at the front of the pack. But it's basically between you and one other car. Maybe two other cars, depending on what's in there. But using the last race for an example, we were in the Stingray and the Skyline was the only car that was any competition. We had the RX-7, which was about 5 seconds behind, but you'd think that the whole pack would be similar performance cars. But there we are. We're on the last lap at least, and we are miles ahead of the next car. Coming around this corner, and I've never taken that corner well so far. Got a problem with that one. Going wide each time there. Coming around there nicely. 6.5 seconds, pretty much behind now, that car is. And on this section that we've just gone over there, I'm pretty sure they lose about 2 seconds. Between 1 and 2 seconds a lap, I'm sure they do. So, overall, that is probably the easiest one so far out of the endurance ones. So that's number 19 down, guys. Only one more to go of the endurance series, or section of races. And it was the Corvette that overtook the M12. I just referred to it as the M400 last time. That was incorrect. I meant the M12. M400 is the other model of Noble. But yes, 8 seconds behind the Z06 was, and then the Noble was 10 seconds behind, so very easy indeed, that one. 7,600 kudos to add to the total. Getting closer to that rank 50 there. So we're using the cover car in this one, guys, the Ferrari Enzo in Edinburgh, 5 laps. So this is going to be quite a challenge, because we've got some of the best cars in the game on this one. Some of the Extreme Series cars there. We've got the Jaguar XJ220. But the two cars in the picture here are going to be the biggest challenge. We've got the Porsche 911 GT1 and the Mercedes CLK GTR. The Mercedes is definitely going to be the hardest one out of those two. As we do the first corner fairly well, getting ahead of most of the pack there. And then the Porsche GT1 took a terrible line, so we're able to get ahead of him at that point. Bouncing all over the track though, this track is really not easy in this Ferrari. The Ferrari does power slide loads at the lower speeds. But me just absolutely bullying my way through. And the reason I was driving so sloppily is because I think this was my 4th or 5th attempt on this event, because my game did keep freezing. And it was always towards the end of the race on the 4th or 5th lap. If you go and watch the Let's Play of Street Race 20 of this one, you'll see how many times it freezes. So I think this is my 5th attempt, and I wasn't sure I was going to get through the race, so I employed any tactic possible to try and get through the race. So I just absolutely pinned that Mercedes against the wall there, trying to get past. As we move on to lap number 2, 1 minute 20 a lap it's going to be around. Braking way too late there. But this racing line there seems to be a bit weird. If you follow that racing line, you tend to go a bit slower. So I always go a bit tighter to the apex and go a bit quicker, if possible. But this is the point it kept freezing at. I always went round this corner, and about here, it kept freezing. So that is due to me playing on the 360, so it doesn't like some circuits sometimes. We know about the lag we get in certain races, but yeah. It did keep freezing, and it was very annoying. So I was keeping my fingers crossed that this was going to be the event that we'd, well, the attempt that we get done. And that section we've just gone through is definitely the hardest on this track. In the Enzo, we do keep just spinning at that low speed and power sliding around. This car's so much better when you get going at the higher speeds. So I'd definitely rather have that Mercedes CLK than this one on this track. And I also, one of the times it froze, it was when I was looking behind on this straight. So throughout this race, I'm not going to look behind because I was scared it was going to freeze again. So I really tried my best, but we can see there, due to my terrible driving at this point, the CLK is right behind us. So we're going to have to up our driving if we want to drop it at this point. Coming around this corner again, and I don't think this is a track that I've seen before. I think this is a unique one. We've driven around obviously quite a lot of Edinburgh and seen a lot of different tracks, but this one's I think only on the arcade mode. I don't think it's in the World Series. Don't seem to remember it. Again, getting way too much power sliding going on with this thing. Really hard to get the power down. It's only when it hits around 100 miles an hour it starts getting more stable. Going over the bumps there, and this is also really hard to control. As you can see the car bouncing around there, and I'm just keep hitting the barrier at this point. Terrible driving. Definitely my worst attempt. But we come around the corner. Looking for the fourth lap now. Only 2 laps to go. Praying that it wasn't going to freeze at this point. It's 1:18 this time, and we are 1.3 seconds ahead. So we have improved our lead with some questionable driving. So at this point, it was all going our way. Going around there nicely. You can just lift off slightly. I don't think you can go full speed around there. Taking a much different line through there. Going over the top of the curb. Not sure if that's the one you're supposed to take, but we'll make it work. Around the section again. Try not to kick the back end out too much. Really trying to get this thing going in a straight line. And this is definitely the hardest corner. That's the best I've done it so far. No drama through there this time. For the first time ever. Around here, getting a bit of air through there again. Doing this bit a lot better this time. Nearly 2.5 seconds ahead of the CLK now. So even though they're in the CLK and you'd think they'd have a better chance of winning, the event itself isn't too hard. I'd say it's the second hardest we've done in this episode. Corvette Stingray is obviously the hardest, then I'd say this one. And the first and third one weren't too difficult in the TVRs. But 1.4 seconds, courtesy of me crashing really badly before the last lap. But we are on the last lap now. So just got to see if we make no mistakes here, because the Mercedes hasn't been really in an opportunity to overtake us at this point. That seems like nearly the correct line, minus hitting into the barrier. That seems like a better line through there. And that was definitely not how to take that one. Way too wide there. Kicking the end out through this bit. Just about getting through. Okay. Getting a bit of power sliding and oversteering on there, but just about managing to go through. Okay. So we're going through this bumpy section for the last time. Getting a bit of air there again, but learning this track better now, so starting to do that section pretty well. Hitting the barrier around here again. I'm pretty sure I've done that most laps. Just praying at this point that we'd see it through and the game would not freeze. Gone around the final corner. Using the width there, and we actually did it. We crossed the line. Street race number 20 done. And that's all the street races done finally. This episode has taken so long because of the endurance races. And the Mercedes in the end was 1.5 seconds behind. So we managed to keep it around there for the entire race. And we got 10,000 kudos for that, so that's very nice. There we are, all the street races finally done. Glad to get those out of the way. So we can focus now on the timed runs, which are going to be in the next episode. So we'll be doing the first 4 in the Perfect Match series, using the Vauxhall VX220, and 1 to 4 is going to be where we start, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you did, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you're new for more content, and I'll see you next time.